Hello guys, welcome to the 25th lesson in this VueJS course. And on this particular lesson, I'm really excited because we are going to be looking at another brand new aspect in this particular VueJS course. We're going to be learning how to communicate with servers in VueJS. Now, if you're already learning VueJS, I at least assume to some specific extent you know a bit about data fetching, and I wouldn't really want to bore you with unnecessary details. Nevertheless, I would still take time to explain all the necessary things you need to know about data fetching, especially those parts that are specific to Vue.js. So before we actually move further and we dive into our code, how about we take a bit of time and look into data fetching itself? Okay, now as a front-end developer, at various points in time, you're actually going to need to communicate with the server. Whether to tell the server, okay, you need a particular information, or to send a particular information for verification, or a whole lot of things like that. Now, this is mostly done through REST APIs. Note the word mostly done. Now, we have some other methods also, but the REST APIs is actually the most popular method. Now, API integration is one of the most important tasks of front-end development. As a front-end developer, making use of any front-end library, any front-end framework, or maybe just vanilla HTML, CSS, JavaScript, learning to actually communicate via APIs is very important. And also, API integration, data fetching allows you to actually load dynamic data on your web application while still providing the best user experience and speed. So that means you can actually get the fresh information on your web page or on a particular web application without having to reload the web page while the user does not even know that that is actually going on. You must have actually experienced this, that okay, maybe you are on a particular blog page and you search for a particular thing, and before you can blink your eye, you see the data on the web page has actually been replaced and actually been refreshed. This is usually done very fast. It actually provides a very good user experience and speed for the end user. Okay, now here are some key terms that you need to know when working with APIs or when you are fetching data from a server. Now, there are a lot of things, there are various key terms that you should familiarize yourself with, but the most important ones, I've actually noted them out. And the first one is endpoint. Now, an endpoint basically refers to a location where an API actually accepts a request. Now, there might be a particular API, let's say google.com is an API. Now, google.com might not accept requests on maybe google.com. Might be google.com //API or /v2 or something. So that particular endpoint where you can actually make a request, okay, maybe google.com, for example, /API /posts. So that example, that a particular point is, that particular location is what is referred to as an endpoint. Now, moving on, we have what we call a resource. Now, resource is a specific data sent from the server. Okay, so when you make a request, and maybe you get a particular blog post, that specific blog post is referred to as a resource. Now, another thing we have is the URI. The URI is basically the identifier, that is the ID for a particular resource. So let's say you need to get a particular resource from a particular blog post, and using my previous example, we have google.com /API /blogs. Okay, so let's say you say /API /blogs/1. So that exactly is the URI for that particular resource. All right, let's move on. Now, when it comes to data fetching, there are some common data fetching method as a developer you actually need to get yourself familiar with. Now, the first one is what we know as the GET request. And now the GET request is basically to retrieve or to get data from the server. And the get request does not in any way tamper or edit or manipulate the data on the server. Its main purpose is just to get from the server, has nothing to do with changing or manipulating that particular data from the server. And secondly, we have the post request. Okay, now the post request actually sends data to the server and it creates a new resource on the server. So if you need to create a new for example, using the previous example, a new blog post, you're actually going to make a post request and not a get request. Moving on, we have the put request. Okay, the put request is used to update an existing resource. So let's say you have a particular blog post on the server and you actually need to edit it. Okay, so maybe change the slug or maybe change the profile, the featured image, or any information thereabout. You're going to make use of the put request. And we also have the patch request, though not as commonly used as the put request. Now the patch request is similar to the put request, but it is actually more specific. All right, and moving on to the last one I have here, we have the delete request. Now the delete request, that is its name suggests, it actually deletes or removes a particular resource from the server. Okay, we have other data fetching methods. We have such as the tunnel, we have the connect, we have the options, but these are actually the major ones that you actually need to know. And you might not even make use of the patch as much, but once you know how to actually get make a get request, post request, put request, delete request, trust me, you have most of what you actually need. And these 4 data fetching methods is the crux of what we actually call the CRUD operation in software development or in web development. So we have the post for create, we have the get for read, we have the put for update, and we have the delete, well, for delete. All right, so I think we've taken enough time discussing this. How about we actually get right into our code and we see some examples? Alright, for this lesson, before we actually go into integrating the API we want to make use of in our recipe app, I quickly want to show us this particular test API. Alright, the link will also be in the description below, and we're just basically going to quickly look at how to fetch data in VueJS and the basics. Okay, and we have various resources right here, and we're just going to make use of the post. And if you go to /guide right here, you can see some further information on getting a resource, listing all resource, creating a resource. So just basically the get, post, put, as we can see right here, the put method, and okay, we have the patch right here, and then we should have delete right here. Okay, so that works fine. Now right here inside of the app, I created a new route which is fetch, and if we should come here, we can see it right here. And one thing, if you'd notice, is basically we are making use of the options API. Now here's how it's going to go. I'm going to first show us how to do this using the options API before moving on to the composition API. Alright, and another thing I want to note is I'm just mainly going to be working with the get request, and maybe I will show you an example with maybe a post request, yeah, something like this. And then the remaining ones, it's things that I'm pretty sure you can figure it out. Alright, and if you should come right here, another thing is under the package.json, I'm going to be making use of Axios instead of the Fetch API. Now you could make use of the Fetch API, that works fine, and I think I'm going to show you how to use the Fetch API also before going into Axios. So whenever you're building your app or you are working on any other project, you have a full grasp of the different options or different alternatives you have. Alright, without wasting further time, let's go into our app. Now the first thing I'm going to do is come right here, and I'm going to say data. Okay, so remember the options API, and I'm going to return, okay, we're going to have posts, and the post is basically going to be an empty array right here, and I'm going to use a lifecycle hook. The lifecycle hook I want to use is mounted. Okay, and right here I'm going to say console.log component mounted. All right, so this works fine. And another thing is right here we can also return something to show that the we are currently fetching. So we can say loading and we want it to be false. All right, so let's save that and let's come right here. I'm going to open the console and we can say right here, components mounted is being logged to the console. All right, that works fine. So what I want to do is whenever it is mounted, the first thing I want to do is I want to fetch from the API. So I'm just going to copy this right here. So let's just copy this right here. So to make this faster instead of typing everything from scratch, so we have this right here and then we say fetch the particular endpoint we want to fetch, and right here I want to fetch all the posts, and then we are going to it's going to return a promise. All right, so in that promise we are going to actually then use the .json method to actually pass the JSON, and we have this console.log. But let's just quickly see how that works, and we can see right here it quickly fetch this particular data. So we have 100 posts right here being logged to the console. And one thing we can essentially do is, instead of just logging this to the console, I'm basically going to do something such as this dot post is going to be equal to JSON. All right, so we are basically assigning the value we get, we are assigning it to this particular post we have here. So to be sure that actually works, so I'm going to create a div right here, and I'm going to, inside of this, I'm going to have another div, and this div is going to be a v4. We're going to use a v4, and right here we're going to just copy posts. And for this, I think let's look at the fields we actually have. So if I should open this, make the request directly in my browser right here, and one of the reasons I recommend I love making use of the Firefox developer browser is because of some nice features like this. So I can see the raw data, I can see it in JSON format, right, like this, collapse all, expand all, and all of that. So you can save, you can copy, and essentially what I want to check, we have the title and then we have the body. All right, so what we are essentially going to do is I'm going to have p, and I'm going to say post, that is going to be item dot title. So let's save that and let's see what we have right here. We can see it right here. To make it look a bit better, what I'm going to do is add a class, and I'm going to say max width is going to be 1000 pixels, and I'm going to say mx auto to align it to the center. And once I'm done with that, I want to add a flex column. And what I'm going to do is add a gap of 3 and divide x. So let's save that and let's see what we have. Oh, that should be divide y, sorry about that. So we can see we have all of this post right here. All right, this works fine. So we see we're able to fetch it from an API. All right, this works and this is looking good. Now one thing though is we can, when this is loading, we can actually add a kind of conditional component to show that this is loading. Let me show you what I mean. So right here I can have a div and I can say something like loading. All right, and this here I'm going to add a class of text center, and I'm going to add animate bounce. All right, so and this is going to be text LG. So let's see, and let's see how that actually is going to look like. So up here we have this loading right here. Okay, and to simulate this, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to first comment this out, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to say this dot loading is equal to true. So we're going to set it to true, and to make this request a bit longer, I'm going to say set timeout. Okay, so let's just use the set timeout function. So only after 3 seconds, that's when this fetch function is going to run. So right here I'm going to put this here, and once it has assigned this the result we get, it assigned it to this particular array right here, and then I'm going to say this dot loading is then going to be false. All right, that's the first step. And then the second step is we are going to use and then if right here. So if loading. Okay, so let's save that and let's see what we have. So we can see at the beginning right here we see it loading. Okay, and let's see, we are still having this show up right here. Okay, so obviously there's something wrong with our condition. Okay, so oh sorry, this should be right here. So let's bring this, yeah, sorry, that was a stupid mistake to make. So right here, let's refresh this and let's see. Okay, we can see the loading, then after 3 seconds, okay, we can see it's not loading again. So that is one way we can actually do something like that. Okay, and so let's actually change this to Axios. Remember I mentioned I'm going to use Axios, so I can just say Axios, and I have to actually import it right here. So I'm going to import Axios from Axios. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say axios.get. All right, I'm going to copy this URL, so let's paste it right here. And the difference between Axios and the Fetch API is we only have to run the then method just once. Okay, so I'm going to say response, and then we are going to have all this here. Okay, and then if there is any error, so we are going to say dot catch. So if there is any error, so I'm going to say error, and we are just basically going to console.log the error. Okay, so let's save that now, and we should still get the same. So let me just refresh this. Okay, so we are saying this loading. Okay, so there's an error right here, which is the JSON is not defined. Oh, sorry, this should be, let's first log this to the console. Okay, so I'm going to just comment that out, and I'm going to say console.log response. So let's save that and let's see what we get. Okay, so we can see we have this object, so the response.data, and that's exactly what we need. So what I'm going to do is comment this, uncomment this, and then okay, do something such as this dot post is going to be response.data. All right, so let's save that, and I just want to refresh so we can see that happen from the beginning. And let's see loading out, and then we get the data right here. All right, so that's just really very simple, right? And another thing I would like to do, so let's remove this. Okay, and we don't really need to put this inside of a set timeout function again. Aha, so let's just save this. And another thing I would love to do is I would love to create a new view. So I'm going to say fetch detail view dot view, and right here we're going to just create a component, and I'm still going to make use of the API, the options API right here, and I'm going to say let's just do this. I'm going to copy everything we have right here, and I'm going to paste it here. We don't need this actually, so let's just quickly clear that up a bit. Okay, And another thing is I'm going to make use of Axios. We don't need this, and we're going to basically say fetch detail view. All right, so let's quickly add that our inside of our router configuration. So what I'm basically going to do is I'm going to duplicate this here, and I'm going to say /fetch, and I'm going to have the ID right here, and the name is going to be fetch detail. Okay, and then this is going to be fetch detail view. All right, so this works fine, and let's just basically have a router link that would instead go to individual page or the individual view. So for that, instead of this, I'm going to change this to router link. Okay, so let's change this to router link, and this also router link. Okay. Okay, so coming back here, I'm just going to paste this right here. So the params is going to basically be the ID, and we're going to just get the item.id. So let's save that and let's see what we have on the front end here. And if we should over on this, we can see that the ID for each one of these is very unique. So if I should come here onto inspect, and we check here, we see the ID is for 19, 18. So the ID, essentially the IDs we get from the data. So if we should click on this, okay, we can see right here, okay, fetch detail view. So the plan is whenever we actually click on any of these, we are going to actually fetch the data. Okay, so what I'm basically going to do is, let me close every other file right here. What I'm basically going to do right here is, whenever we have mounted, okay, and then we can use any other lifecycle hook that, okay, you think that would be better. But whenever we have mounted, the first thing I want to do is console.log, okay, this dot, then router, okay, this dot route. So let's do that, and let's come here to the console. Okay, we can see that we have the full path right here, and then also if we should come down right here, we have access to the params, so the route params and then ID. Okay, so this dot route dot params dot ID. Now let's save that and let's see. We are going to get the exact ID that we need, okay, to fetch a particular resource. And if you look at the documentation right here, we can fetch a particular resource right here using their URI, okay, using the ID. And what I'm basically going to do is, let me just copy, I'm going to copy this, and we are going to have loading false, and we're also going to have posts. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to say something like post, and this is basically going to be an object. Okay, so looking at the structure that we have, we are going to get an object. Okay, and what I'm going to do is, let's just copy this to make it faster. So I'm going to copy this, and we can essentially just paste this here, and here we are going to actually add the ID that we need. So I'm going to clear this, and I'm going to just bring this, copy this, and since I'm using template string, I can just use a dynamic value like so. And let's see, so to actually use the data, so this is going to be dot post, okay, and this is also dot post. All right, so now what we're going to do is, also let's copy this loading section right here. So I'm going to paste this here, and then I'm going to paste this again. So I'm going to say if not loading, okay, so only when it's not loading, then we want to actually have a div, or rather a paragraph. Sorry, let's add the paragraph instead. So the paragraph, we're going to have the title and then the body. Okay, so we're going to have two paragraphs, and inside here I'm going to basically have this particular post, we're going to have post.title, and then right here we're going to have post.id. So let's save that and let's see what we actually get. Okay, we see this loading and we are seeing some sort of error right here. Okay, that's because we didn't add the /. Okay, so let's fix that and come right here, and this is starting to look okay, and we can see, oh, there is an error. Let's quickly fix that. This should not bounce. Okay, so let's save that and I'm going to refresh that again. Okay, so we can see the post title and we can see the post ID. Oh, I think what I meant to actually get was the post body. So let's actually use the post body. And to add a bit of class, I'm going to say this is going to be text LG, and this is going to be text. Okay, sorry, class is going to be equals to text 2XL and font bold. Okay, and let's add a bit of margin, so MB5. So let's save that, and this is not going to be center, and let's save and let's see what we have. Okay, so we can see it's right here. Okay, so if I should go back and I should select another post, let's say we select this. Okay, and we scroll, we can see it right here being fetched. All right, so this is basically how it actually works, and we can see we are actually fetching for each particular view, and for this, so we can see for individual page, for this specific specific resource, we are loading them on the fetch detail view. So if I should go back and let's scroll up and I should select this, okay, it loads from the API and we're able to see this particular data. All right, which is all nice and well. So this is basically the crux of, or the basics of, fetching data from an API, and we've made use of the options API. Now how about we actually look at if we want to achieve the same thing using the composition API. And for this, I'm not going to be using the setup hook, I'm going to be using the setup script. Okay, so the first thing I want to do actually is I'm going to comment all these out. Okay, so let's comment all these out, and right here I'm going to add setup. Okay, that's the first change we need to make, and right here I'm going to do something. Remember, we can import refs, make use of refs and reactive for our data, for our whatever data type we are actually creating inside of the composition API. So we discussed that some few lessons back. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say let post equals to ref. So I actually want to import ref from view. Okay, so we are going to have an empty array like this, and then the second thing is, remember, the setup function in the composition API actually runs before any lifecycle hook. So I actually am not going to make use of the lifecycle hook. So what I'm essentially going to then do is I'm also going to say let loading equals to ref, and then we're going to say false. Okay, so we have these two things created right here, which is looking nice. And then the next thing I actually want to do is fetch this particular data. Okay, so what I'm going to essentially do is I'm going to copy this right here, and I'm going to say instead of running it directly, I'm going to say const fetch data equal to, this is going to be an arrow function, and I'm just going to paste this in here. All right, so let's uncomment this and let's actually refactor our code. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say loading dot value is going to be equal to true. Remember, we're making use of refs. Okay, and I'm going to change this right here, and I'm going to say something such as posts dot value equals to response dot data. Okay, so we're going to clear this off, and then right here also we're going to say loading dot value, okay, is going to be equal to false. And we can also add the same thing here in case an error actually happens. Okay, so this is basically the function that we need. Now remember that this particular function right here has been created, but it has not been called. I just defined the function, so I can clear this off now, and I can just call fetch data. Okay, and now let's see if this would actually work. So let's save that and let's give it a whirl right here. Okay, so I'm going to refresh this. Okay, we can still see it work, but it seems we have a bit of error right here. Okay, property loading is undefined. Okay, so we said property loading is undefined, so let's see. Okay, so I think what the error we have right here is we are accessing this dot loading, and let's clear that and let's save. We shouldn't have any error again, so let's refresh that. Okay, so we can see it works totally fine. All right, and we do something similar if we actually want to do our refactoring here also. And the first thing is I'm just going to comment all these out, and let's see. Okay, comment all these out, and then right here we're going to add the setup option. Okay, so we have the setup option, so then I can say let post, okay, so post equal to ref. So we're going to import ref from view, okay, equals to ref, and then we're going to have an empty object. So we are going to say let loading equal to ref also, and then false. Okay, so then the next thing is we create our function const fetch data equal to. Okay, one thing I want to note is whenever we create a function such like this to fetch data from an API, usually we don't just log the error to the console. We maybe store it in a particular value and display it to the user so that the user have an idea what exactly is going on. But because we are currently learning and I'm trying to show us some things, so that is why I'm not bothering about it. I'm just logging the error to the console. But in the real world, when you're building a real life application, most likely most of the times you would never, or you should never, just do this, but handle the error. Okay, if there's an error occurs, there should be a kind of contingency. So let's complete the fetching data function for this also. I'm just going to copy this and let's paste it here, and we're just going to do some few changes such as, okay, this particular aspect. So we are fetching for a particular resource, not for all the resources. Okay, so let's paste that, and instead of posts we're going to have post.value. And okay, I think that covers everything, so let's save and let's test that out. All right, so right here this works, but what if we decide to click on, let's say, this first particular resource here, and we should see it working, but no, it's not. All right, so let's see what exactly the issue is. Oh, we haven't called this particular function. Okay, so we actually have to call it for it to run. So let's save that, and I'm going to reload that. Okay, so we're having an issue right here. Oh, sorry, this dot route dot params dot id, we actually are still making use of this, and this works in the options API. So how do we actually access this in the composition API? Okay, to do that is actually very simple. but we need to import another aspect, another part that we need from the Vue router and not from Vue itself right now. So I'm going to just comment this out, and right here I'm going to say import. So what are we importing from Vue router? So we need to actually import use route. So if you need to make use of the router itself and maybe to push or to do another particular thing, you can make use of this, but this is what we need. We just need information about the route. So I'm going to say const, I'm going to say routes equal to use route, and we're going to call it like so. All right, so we have this here. So let's quickly do something. Let's console.log the route and let's see what that actually gives us. Okay, so let's save that, and we can see it right here. We have some objects like so, and inside of this target we can see we have the hash, the full path. We have various things we can actually get from it. So how about we do something like route dot params. Okay, so let's log that to the console and let's see what it gives us. We can see it right here. It gives us an object with the params we have, which is the ID of 1. Okay, so we can see how we can actually get the specific information we need. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the console.log and uncomment this out. Okay, so let's paste this, and then we are going to say .id. Now saving this, and this should run. Oh, it's good, we can see it running. So let me clear the console. Let's check. Okay, another resource. Okay, this works. Or about something else such as this, and boom, we can see every one of them is actually working, and it's really fast and really looking good and nice. Don't mind the styling. I know it's not going to win any award for the best styling. Okay, and let's see. Before we round this up, let's quickly look at how to actually create a new resource. And I'm just going to copy this. Okay, so copy this, and right here inside of the fetch view, I'm going to create another function. Okay, so I'm going to say const. So let's just make things organized. I'm going to say const create resource, create data. Okay, is going to be equal to, I'm going to use an arrow function, and I'm going to paste this right here. Now we can make use of this, and we can make use of Axios. All right, but I think I'm going to be making use of the Fetch API for this, just to keep things fast track. All right, so right here I'm going to have a button. All right, and the button is just going to be let's just add a bit of class, text white and bg green 500. Okay, and whenever we hover, we want it to be bg green 700. All right, so let's add a bit of padding, px5 py2, and I'm just going to say add new. All right, so what we're basically going to do is whenever we click on this add new, we want it to actually create a new data. So for the user ID, I want it to be 300, and for this, let's just have a bit of dummy text. So I'm going to import dummy text. I'm going to import a paragraph right here. I'm going to say tests. Okay, so let's actually do something such as we're going to use the @click. Okay, and that's going to be equal to this create data. All right, so that works fine. So let's save that and let's see if that is actually going to work. So going back to the fetch view, okay, we have this right here. So click on this, and we can see right here it's making a post request, and we can see the new data that we just created. So if we should adjust that, and we should for example create maybe test2, and let's say by created by user 303, and let's save that. Okay, so click on this, we can see the request being made here, and it's being added actually. Alright, so this is the basics and overview of how you can actually create and add new data using various HTTP various data fetching method. Alright, and in the next lesson we are going to be looking at how to actually apply the knowledge we've learned in this particular lesson into our recipe app. I will see you there.